This podcast contains material that may not be suitable for everyone, including but not limited to adult language and situations. Under 18 should only listen with adult consent. Listener's discretion is advised. Hello there, I'm Carlos and welcome to High on Paranormal. Now, I hope you can join me in a good mode while listening to today's story. And, well, I got my bowl packed up, I got something to drink, so I won't keep you any longer, and let's go ahead and start with the story.
Hace tiempo también me pasó cuando estaba en la universidad, estaba pensando en la universidad, como en el 2001.
A while back, it also happened to me when I was in the university. I was thinking of the university about 2001, and I used to hang out with a friend, Maria. I remember we were always studied together and did all the assignments together. One day we had to do an assignment and study for a test, and I stayed at her house up until around 12:30, something like that, at night. At that time, everything was normal here. You could go out into the street 1, 2, or 5 o'clock in the morning, get a taxi or get on the bus, because there wasn't any issues like there are now, on the streets. I remember I used to get out of her house, go into the avenue, wait for a taxi or one of the public transportations from El Milagro. And I was waiting and nothing happened. At that, something happened when a gentleman arrives. He asks me where I'm going, and I tell him I'm going to Bella Vista, where I live. But I've been waiting for a while and nothing goes by, so he says, I'm going to downtown. If you want, we can walk together to Bella Vista, one of the streets, and then you go where you're going, and I'll take the bus. That way I can head to the downtown. And he said, okay. So we agreed on it. We started talking while we walk, about anything. Like anything that he really wanted to just talk about, asking questions, like what was I doing there? And he said, and I tell him I was with Maria. And he tells me, oh, yeah. I know them from many years ago. Many years ago since I've met that family, and I've been knowing them. And so we continued talking about, just regular things. We went by the mall called Lago Mall, and there were some of our friends there. I continued walking, and when I arrived to the street of Bella Vista, I get on the public transportation. He gets on his bus going the other way, crosses the street. When I get onto the public transportation, I didn't hear anything about him. But the next day, when I come across Maria and I meet with her, she asked me how that I was able to manage to be able to leave and stuff. So I told him I was standing there for a while, that there was an old man there show up, and we basically just accompany each other going towards Bella Vista. And she looks at me weird. Like, what man? Well, that man that showed up here, he's tall with a mustache. I don't really remember his name, I tell her. And when I see her face, her eyes got teary, like about to cry. And I get alerted and I'm like, what's going on? And so she says, I'm going to tell you something. And so I have my doubts, and when she comes back from her home, from lunch, she calls me up and says, come here, Leo. And I'm like, what's up? You know what we were talking about, that man that went with you and stuff, and how I got somewhat upset. And she shows me a picture, and I said, yeah, that's the guy that I went with to Bella Vista. And she tells me, that gentleman, his name was Alfonso. He passed away over 10 years ago when he hanged himself. several people had said that they've seen him before, but they have not had any contact with him until now. You're the only one that I've heard of who have had contact with him, and you were saying he accompanied you, and I'm like, yeah, like I didn't feel anything weird or bad about it. He was just talking to somebody. Well, that guy, that gentleman, committed suicide by hanging a long time ago because he used to live at the beach and he lost his family. He used to live right by where the mall is now in Lagomon. His family, he lost it in an accident, and he just couldn't handle it and hang himself because he took care of him and care of him too much. And people around here, they've seen him where they believe, and the belief is that he comes out, keeps an eye out on things, and the fact that you saw him, walk with him, and recognize him by seeing the pictures, things are getting ugly. And I just sat there for a while thinking about it. And I'm like, well, because we're always doubtful whether it happened or not. And I went to Maria's aunt. And when she arrived, she's like, hey, Nelly, he came up and he saw Alfonso. And I don't know, or I don't remember who was saying something bad about him, about the old man. And when he said that, and he says, oh, yeah, that motherfucking ghost. Well, that door in the living room got slammed really hard. And we all jumped, kind of like we almost climbed up onto the tree. I couldn't understand that reason. I could not understand why it happened to me. Or maybe something could have happened to me on the way there and he went with me to a company so I wouldn't be alone during that time. But I still think about it, and it's odd. And that was a long time ago, more than 20 years ago. The woman behind my aunt. The following happened on October 14th, 1978. And this experience I'm going to tell happened to my family before I was born, and it was told to me the following way by my mom. Now, this was a holiday. I believe it was the Indigenous Resistance Day. And since my family lived in a town called Valera, it's like I said, small town in the mountains. It's about an hour away from another small town called Cajaseca. And as they were traveling to Cajaseca, because they were used to go to the beaches in Maracaibo Lake to swim and stuff, and like in every trip, you get up early, everybody goes to the breakfast area, get everybody ready to go and enjoy the beach as early as possible. It was my mom, my aunt and uncle, my sister, the older one, Olga, we call her Olgita. It was her, followed by my middle sister, who was 4, and then my younger brother, who was 2 years old. Everybody woke up, like always, wanted to get ready as early as possible to go to the beach as early as possible. And everybody was anxious, having their breakfast, getting ready. And, well, as you can imagine, a child's happiness by just going to swimming and stuff like that, it was very evident. And, but Olgita was acting different. She was a lot less motivated than what you would expect from her, and she was acting very different. As if she was feeling something or having a premonition about that trip to the beach. And it seems like, eating slower than normal, doing anything that she could do to just go as slow as possible and not have to leave the house and get to the beach. I mean, to the point where she was the last one eating. It was my mom and my aunt and Olgita at the table, just them waiting for her to finish. And they were just talking while she finished her breakfast. But then my sister goes ahead and interrupts their conversation between my mom and my aunt and asks my mom, who's that person behind my aunt? And, she's dressed in white, and who is she? Who is she? And so they look at each other, and it seems like as they're looking around, my sister was the only one who was able to see it, or to see this lady. And so when they ask her, like, who's the lady and stuff that you're seeing, they start, doing the sign of the cross on them and on themselves and praying and stuff. And they said that they felt very nervous because they didn't see anything. And my sister was continuing to insist that she would see that lady standing behind her, but there was nobody there. And they just told her, just finish up, get your food ready. There's nobody there, It must be somebody just like a child seeing an imaginary friend or something. But among themselves, they knew something odd was happening because she's never done or said anything like this before. So, I don't know. They thought maybe somebody's going to die. And nobody really talked about it anymore. And they continued their day. They got into the car and they went to the beach. Once they arrived, my mom and my dad, who they stay sitting on the sand. They don't usually like to go in the water. They just like to watch the water. But my aunt and uncle, they did go inside the water with my siblings. The water was around their knees for for the kids' knees. So it was very nice, very calm water at the beach. And so Olguita says, I'll be right back. And she goes running to go take some crab legs that she found. And she was running towards their parents, and she ran and fell into a hole of an oil drill. Back then, it was normal to kind of, it was okay, I guess, I don't know, to have oil perforations in the beach area. And, well, unfortunately, there was no signaling, nothing letting you know that was there, that danger was there. And my dad says that everything happened very quickly, where when my dad realized what was happening, went to the hole to pull her out, but unfortunately, Olguita held her breath for too long, and her lungs just gave up. It was an extremely hard time for everybody, and at this time we believe or we think that she had a premonition about her own passing, and that lady that she saw behind my aunt, well, I mean, we never know who or what it was, but we believe that was a warning that day would be her last day. Well, at least that's how we see it. Now, it's been 44 years, and there's always a memory of those dates. The sister I never met. Thank you for listening to today's episode. Don't forget to follow this podcast so that you don't miss any new episodes. You can also search for PKDK on your favorite podcast player for all the other shows that we have. Now, if you have a story or experience you would like to share, or if you have any ideas or suggestions for some of the situations the listeners are going through, you can send all this to pkdkpod@gmail.com or join the Facebook group by searching High on Paranormal. Finally, this program was created by me, Carlos Aguirre, in association with Aguirre Language Services, where long-lasting business relationships are created through amazing customer service, impeccable quality, and 24 hours availability at no extra cost. Talk to you soon.